Welcome to the Simplified Organization Show, where real moms chat about realistic home and life management. We want to avoid perfectionism, reject overwhelm, and handle housework and all the things that go into making a home in a way that builds relationships, because our home is a tool and not a showpiece. I'm your host, Misty Winkler. I write and podcast at simplyconvivial.com about homemaking, homeschooling, and doing life cheerfully. I'm also the author of the Convivial Homeschool, Gospel Encouragement for Keeping Your Sanity While Living and Learning Alongside Your Kids. And today I'm joined by Jamie Erickson. When Jamie is not curating memories, hoarding vintage books, or playing ringmaster to her circus of 5 blissfully abnormal kids, she can be found encouraging and equipping a growing tribe of mothers across the globe on the Mom to Mom podcast. Also through her blog, The Unlikely Homeschool, at national conferences, and in her great book, Homeschool Bravely: How to Squash Doubt, Trust God, and Teach Your Child with Confidence. Welcome, Jamie.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be here with you, Misty.
So what kind of things are on your plate? Your bio kind of had a little bit, but can you kind of give people a picture of what managing life looks like for you?
Yeah, well, I launched my first daughter from homeschooling last year. And so she has been in and out of the house this year. She's taking off to do an internship. So you think you're kind of done when one child kind of spreads her wings and leaves, but it's a different kind of busy, different commitment level. And then that leaves my 4 sons here at home. So we have, I'm not a huge fan of grade levels, but if I were to, give the official answer, it's 10th down through 4th. So that keeps me pretty busy.
Yeah.
I help my husband run his business, and I am currently working on my next book. It actually goes to the printer or the publisher this week. So
that's exciting. You tell people a little bit about what that book's on.
Well, I can't disclose the title just yet.
Okay.
Mum's the word on that, but it is a book that I'm hoping will help women use their homes for gospel purposes. And I think that, if you have a home, that's a tool that you can steward for the kingdom, and let's do it well.
Absolutely. Oh, that's wonderful. So, with kids spanning the age and, going through all the ages and the homeschooling, I know it's easy to get irritated and upset and frustrated with our kids, especially when we do have other projects going on. It could just be our default setting sometimes, as much as we don't like that, it is. So what would you say to the mom who's easily irritated?
Well, I think first we have to remember that irritation is just a symptom of a deeper problem. There's a root problem there. And actually, that symptom should drive us to find that pain point so that we can hopefully deal with it, and then it won't be an irritation anymore. But I think most of the time in the irritation we face in the day, it's brought about by something small that maybe hasn't been taken care of. We haven't dealt with it properly. And so it's sort of festered just under the surface, kind of like, a sliver. And it's festering and festering and festering for far too long. And now it's infecting our attitude about so many other things. Usually when I blow up, it's over something that has absolutely nothing to do with the fact, or nothing to do with my initial irritation. It's just that I let that irritation go on far too long. And, for some of us, we are blow uppers. Some of us are stuffers. Some of us will, never, ever yell at our children, but we'll take it out on our husbands, even though he didn't have anything to do with it. Or we'll binge eat an entire bag of, Fritos or something. So that irritation then plays itself out in a lot of unhealthy ways because we don't deal with it. So we should be drawn to find the source in order that we can start making some small pivots of change, kind of like an archer. If you know anything about archery, an archer doesn't swing his arrow in huge ways to get to a new point. It's just little tiny, minuscule, almost centimeter pivots to change the entire trajectory of his shot. And that's kind of what we need to do when we find out what that small irritation is. One of my best tips, especially for, let's say, the first week of homeschool, or maybe when you're kicking back into homeschool after having a really long break, when, the schedules go out the window and you're not in a normal routine, my best suggestion is to carry around a 3x5 card with you. And anytime you get these like pricklings of irritation, look around you for a second and write down what you think. What is out of place here? What is causing me pain? Don't stop and deal with it in the moment, because what that does is it pushes everything else in the day further and further behind, and that just snowballs and avalanches the irritation. But just stop and write down quickly what that pain point is. And then at the end of the day, when you have a moment to yourself, little ones are tucked in, and you can just exhale a little bit, look over that list and spend some time brainstorming solutions for those pain points. Sometimes the solution is just a habit that needs to be established or maybe reestablished. If you're finding that the completed schoolwork is just sort of strewn everywhere and you're having to track it down like a giant game of hide and seek, maybe you just need to decide, where are we going to put all the completed work so that I don't have to, play ringmaster to this circus anymore. Sometimes the solution is a tangible product or a tool that maybe you just need to invest some money in. Like, when you keep tripping over the shoes when you're coming in the doorway, maybe you just need to pony up some money and buy a shoe rack, to organize the space. And sometimes the solution is a person. When you have a bored toddler who's, little hurricane hands pulling everything off the bookshelves and, displacing all the science project that you just built, maybe you need to establish some sibling time with your older kids. Maybe it's time to call in reinforcements and ask your husband to step in and help, or hire an older homeschooled child to come over for a few hours and play mama's helper a couple of times a week. So just use that 3x5 card to brainstorm some of those solutions, so you can start finding some solutions that will hopefully help to calm that irritation. Mm-hmm. But I'd also say this: the dis-ease that we feel in this life is a heartburn of the garden. And it's when everything that was good became infected by sin, and it's a reminder that this world isn't our home. Mm-hmm. One of my favorite quotes comes from C.S. Lewis. He said, if I find myself a desire which no experience in this world can satisfy, the most probable solution is that I was made for another world. And so I think we all have to recognize that we're going to have some disease. We're going to feel irritated. But again, it's just a way that we can acknowledge the irritation, but hopefully it will drive us to bring it to God. Mm-hmm. I think if we let him, God can use homeschooling. I know he's used it in my life to not just inform my kids, but transform me and kind of shave off some of those really ugly parts in my life because they've been brought to the surface through homeschooling.
Yeah, for sure. It's for sanctification, for sure.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. I've heard it compared to a rock tumbler, right?
Yes, that's a great analogy. I love that. Yes, shaving off tiny little bits of our ugly personality that our kids get to see day in and day out. I mean, they see all of our ugliness displayed every single day, and there's no escaping it. But then they're also reminded of the sanctifying work that God can do in our lives and in theirs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we're modeling that for them along the way, right in front of them too.
Yeah, and it forces us to kind of do the knee-bending work that's required to find the cure that ails us, to shave off all that irritation.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think a lot of times we're hunting for the solutions that will make everything easy and maybe even everything go our way, when that's not really the point or what God wants. It's not for things to go our way, but for us to turn to him and be dependent on him in the moment.
Yeah, we can have all the silver bullet solutions that we can think of. And at the end of the day, we're still imperfect people living with other imperfect people in an imperfect world. And so there's going to be a level of dis-ease that we feel. And it really is not when when we feel it, but what we do when we feel it that will really matter, how we respond to that irritation.
Thank you for joining me for this episode of the Simplified Organization Show. Don't miss next week when we have part 2 of my conversation with Jamie, where we're going to dig into mealtime solutions, especially if you're feeling discouraged by your grocery budget right now. If you are really feeling the pain points in your life right now, then I recommend doing a brain dump. It just means writing everything down to get it out of your head and onto paper, so then you can pray about it, problem solve through it, and stop letting all of the things not going your way get jumbled up in your head where they discourage and overwhelm you. I have a free brain dump guide. Just go to simplyconvivial.com/brain dump or click the link in the description and get started beating overwhelm.